Hi, guys, and welcome back. We are on chapter 11. Can you believe it? Chapter 11. So, bad news messages. How do we handle bad news messages? So, that's our topic today, bad news messages. So, let's get started. All right. So, how are we going to do this, Dr. Carroll? So, today we're interested in these bad news. How to handle this bad news is our learning objectives are describe how delivering bad news impacts your credibility, explain considerations for deciding which channels to use when delivering bad news messages, and then we're going to summarize principles for effectively delivering that bad news, as well as compose effective bad news messages in person and in writing for various audiences, including colleagues, external partners, and customers. And then we're going to deliver and receive negative performance reviews constructively, as well as review bad news messages for effectiveness and fairness. So let's get started. All right. Have you ever gotten bad news and you wondered, oh my gosh, they could have done a better job at that? And why in the world did they say it like that? Oh, and that bad news hurt you so deeply. And you're wondering, what could they have done better with this? So let's find out how we can be more effective out there in delivering that bad news, especially those of us in management or team management roles, things of that nature, or senior leadership roles. How can we be more effective? Well, first thing is this, guys. Honesty and openness are key. And although people do not like bad news, they expect the truth. And that's it. Bottom line, just simple truth. I was just saying that today to one of the clients that called me. I just need, or people need to receive the truth. They don't need you to sugarcoat it, but they do want you to do it in a way that makes sense. Remember, facts. What are the facts? All right. So, research shows that honesty and openness can lead to more trust in the bad news bearer, the person is bringing it. Delivering bad news the right way can strengthen customer relationships and lay the foundation for increased trust when conditions improve. So, here's some guidelines for maintaining credibility when delivering bad news. We want to deliver the bad news in a timely manner, choose the right mix of channels, sympathize with the bad news recipients, and soften the blow. Provide a simple, clear rationale, explain immediate impacts, focus on solutions and long-term benefits, and show goodwill. Back again to showing goodwill, and that's something. So deliver the bad news in a timely manner. No news is bad news, okay? No news is bad news. It's an opportunity to take what you're given and make something more out of it. The rumor mill will cause you to lose control of the message. Know the details before you deliver the bad news. Choose the mix of channels. Bad news is best delivered in person. Use rich communication with verbal and nonverbal cues to show your concern and sensitivity. Placing it in writing can make it more precise and accurate. So here's some advantages and disadvantages of bad news in a verbal form. The advantages is you can use and observe nonverbal cues from the individual you're giving the bad news to. You can more easily demonstrate intentions. You can more easily effectively clarify the bad news and can respond to concerns immediately. Whereas the disadvantages are you may hinder effective delivery interpretation, discussion of bad news due to strong emotions. It requires a little more time, less able to document the bad news, and less able to provide directions that bad news recipients can reference later. Some more advantages, bad news in written form. The advantages in written form, you can craft the message more carefully, you can document the message more easily, and you can provide a message that serves as a reference, provide directions, instructions, suggestions, and often for future actions. As well as you can deliver the message to a more people more effectively. So you can spread it more effectively across the board. Now, here are some disadvantages. You're unable to demonstrate concern through nonverbal cues, unable to immediately respond to concerns, unable to work out mutual solutions, and less able to control long-term impacts on working relationships. So choose the right mix of channels. There are three aspects. Severity. How serious or detrimental the bad news is. Controllability includes the degree to which the bad news message receiver can alter the outcomes. And then the likelihood relates to the probability of a bad news event occurring. So here are the types on table 11.2. It demonstrates the type of bad news and the richness of communication channels. Please take a close look at this. Pause the recording if you have to, but take a close look at this and make sure you understand all the different variables and what they mean and what the likely richness of that communication needs to be. So gathering information from a variety of sources. Gathering the facts makes sense, guys. Makes you more likely to make objective judgments and propose fair solutions. Be aware of your own emotions and how they impact your thinking. So in developing your message, here are some components of indirect bad news messages. Ease in with a buffer. Provide a rationale. Deliver the bad news, explain impacts, focus on the future as appropriate, and show goodwill. Components of direct bad news messages include ease in with the buffer, deliver the bad news, provide rationale, explain impacts, focus on the future, show goodwill. I said that twice, right? Because I need you to get that in. And just, kind of absorb that for a moment. Think about it. And sympathize. Here's ways to sympathize with bad news recipient and soften those blows. Here's some recommendations and thoughts. Most people appreciate your honesty. Harder to show in writing. Writing, you can misinterpret, or people can misinterpret. Depends on where they are, what they're doing, what their space head is at the moment. Same thing happens in person, but writing can throw off some things the wrong way sometimes. Methods to help prepare emotionally is use a natural subject line, a neutral subject line. Use 1 or 2 sentence buffers, establish common ground, show appreciation, state your sympathy, or otherwise express goodwill. Use a teaser message. Now, 11.3, table 11.3 has examples of buffers and bad news message. Neutral statement, appreciation, sympathy, examples, common ground, compliment. So take a look at those. We're going to pause for a moment. You want to take a look at those and continue on and think about these and think about where in this you've experienced some of these and what you felt like. You might want to write that down. So deliver the bad news. During delivery, find ways to express concern, but don't be excessive. Get to the point, guys. Don't downplay or bury the message. You got to go ahead with the bad news. Provide a clear and rational and specific feedback. So how do we do that? How do you do that? Well, build trust, guys. Use clear, specific, and simple language to build trust. Whereas vague, general, or legal language creates suspicion and anger. I remember I had a call last night from a person who was just so upset that they had received news, and it just, the way it came across, it was untrustworthy, it was ambiguous, and it was fraught with these things that made that person irritated, upset them, and so they called me and upset me about it. But I was like, okay, let me just listen. Sometimes we just need to listen, right? Recipients are more likely to interpret the information as honest and upfront. So explain immediate impact. Be honest. Your focus should be on the bad news recipients. Resist the impulse to minimize the negative impact. Other tips include focus on solutions and long-term benefits and show goodwill. So getting tone, style, and dial and design right. Here's some tips. Aim for a tone of genuine concern in a professional manner. Inject some positive direction to the message, but don't provide false hope. Use a writing style that's simple, accurate, and jargon free. Maintain a simple design. So here's a effective design to a client for bad news to a client. Check it out, pause for a moment, read through these, and then you can come back and, just write down some notes about some of this and see, what you didn't like about it. So moving on. Um, Mom effect. What's that mom effect, Dr. Carroll? Well, this occurs when the chain of messages within an organization is filtered at each level to leave out or inaccurately state the bad news. The message that the top executives often hear ends up being unrealistically rosy. So turning down requests and ideas. Tips. Here's some tips now. Reserve productive and comfortable working relationships by using richer communications channels, and avoid token appreciation. Appeal to values and principles. Avoid turning down requests and ideas in a way that closes the conversation. So delivering bad news to customers. Here's a good one. Contains the same essential components as other bad news messages. Emphasize the options available or solutions the customer has control over. In most bad news situations, customers are interested only in solutions. All right? So how you deliver negative feedback. So here's some things you want to keep in mind when you are delivering negative feedback. Adopt a team-centered orientation. Avoid sugarcoating the bad news. Explain the impacts of the individual's poor performance on organizational performance. Link to consequences. Probe for reasons performance is not higher, and emphasize problem solving rather than blaming. Be firm. So table 11.4 is giving clear and targeted feedback. I want you to pause for a moment and read through these and see what you come up with, and see how one is from less effective to the more effective. How one, he uses a more clear approach and targeted. And Jake will recognize the importance of improving in this area from the email that Juan is sending him. And so the next one is 11.5 is focusing on actions and results and not attitudes and intentions. Pause again for a moment and see how Juan communicates with Jake in a less effective way and a more effective way. Now, 11.6 is establishing measurable expectations. So see how it's less effective way that Juan can do that versus the more effective way Juan can go about doing that when he's communicating with Jake. Now, receiving negative feedback. Seeking and receiving feedback, even when it's negative, will help you to develop the skills you need to make an impact in the workplace, move in new positions, and learn to manage emotions. So let's take a look at 11.7. For reframing your thoughts to initiate feedback conversations. And so we have anger, anxiety, defensiveness, fear of reprisal, fear of personal rejection. And there's the counterproductive response and the reframing statement. Take a moment, pause, look at these, and put down your thoughts. Now, reviewing bad news messages. So sometimes things to consider when reviewing bad news messages include, when writing bad news messages, always review them carefully. Imagine how the recipient may feel and react. Consider asking questions, asking trusted colleagues to review your message and give feedback. Apply the FAIR test. Remember the FAIR test. I want you to go back and print out the FAIR test and always use it. Now, figure 11.11a are your bad news messages fair. So facts, remember FAIR. How factual is your communication? Have I gathered all the relevant facts? Have I examined various accounts of the same events? Is my perspective of the facts influenced by defensiveness, favoritism, or some other bias? And is the rationale for this bad news based on some facts and conclusion? Assess the A in fair. How accessible or transparent are my motives, reasoning, and information? Are motives clear? Or would others perceive that I have a hidden agenda? Is it clear how the decision was made? Am I giving enough information to bad news recipients for them to respond well? And am I hiding any information that casts me in a better light on concealing the reasons for the bad news? All right, so let's look at I. I is for impacts. How does your communication impact stakeholders? Have I considered all the ways in which this message will impact others in the near term or long term? What have I done to lessen the negative impacts on recipients? And am I doing what I can to provide opportunities as appropriate to the bad news recipients? And then R for respect. How respectful is your communication? Would recipients consider my communication respectful? Have I stated the message in a way that recognizes the inherent worth of worth of others? So fair, okay? Remember fair. This is our second time talking about the FAIR method. And that's it for chapter 11. I hope that you enjoy it as we went through this particular chapter. And I hope to see you in Coffee and Conversation as we discuss this chapter as well as others. So that's it. And thank you.